good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. My name is Devin Morgan. I'm the director of baseball at Driveline. My mic just fell down.
That's a mic drop moment.
Yeah, almost. And this is the Driveline Academy podcast. Thank you for joining us. The Driveline Academy podcast, which, to note, is now available everywhere.
Woo.
iTunes, Amazon, Stitcher, Anchor, a bunch of other podcast platforms.
Isn't iTunes dead? Isn't it just like Apple Podcasts?
Sure. Yeah, it is.
I don't want anybody to Google Driveline Youth Academy podcast iTunes and find out that iTunes doesn't exist anymore.
Sure. I think the good thing is like Apple, their SEO game is pretty good. So they're directing it. So like we're available everywhere now and on YouTube and on Spotify if you want to see our faces, depending on how into that you are. Joined as per usual by my partner, Driveline Academy Assistant Director, Jeremy Techtiel. And new face, new introduction to the pod, Steven Streich, Driveline Academy Arizona coordinator.
Yes, sir. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man.
We are happy to have you.
Yeah, so I'm gonna gas you up in a second.
Right.
But you know, when we started Academy, like when it was like April, May of 20, so post COVID, we had started advertising the Grow the Game free training sessions, which was kind of a conduit to number one, get kids who had just lost like a recreational baseball season because of COVID, get them playing baseball again. And also like, hey, if you want to do more of this, come join a team. And I remember when that was going on and we were talking about it on Twitter, which is a global platform. People would be like, hey, bring Academy to Florida or California or Texas or Arizona or Paducah. Like there was a lot of that. Maybe not Paducah specifically, but know. I was looking at real estate in Paducah this weekend. I'm not moving anytime soon. Just, you know. And it was great because it was like, oh, you know, something about the message is resonating. Like there's something about the way that we're talking about doing this differently that is like, people are like, oh, I want to do that immediately. But the reality is that we were in no position whatsoever to expand. Like just none. Like we just did not have systems and structure in place in year one and year two to be able to do that and have any hope of doing that successfully. Fortunately, and again, and I've said this before in department meetings and I'll say it publicly, Jeremy, you fixed that. Like you solved that for us. And like, man, I can't say enough about how appreciative I am of what you've done to solve like operational flaws and weaknesses we have. Obviously, our staff is entirely different, and be able to have Brands and Stratton and Holly and now Steven Streich as part of this whole thing gives us the option now to start kind of picking our spots about where we want to expand. Which kind of gets back to like the root of what we're trying to do with Academy is just do something different when it comes to like what people's conception of youth select club baseball is and what the value proposition is, right? So now I will gas you up, Steven, right. Because, you know, I mean, Jeremy and I had this conversation. You're just such a unicorn hire for us to be able to put someone in a position to execute this thing along kind of the values and core intentions that we have, but someone who's already kind of done that and done this specifically in Arizona. So with that, I would just give you the floor to say whatever you want about like your baseball experience that landed you here.
Start from birth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Birth. Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah. So yeah, I was born and raised in Arizona. So I know that market well. Grew up playing baseball. Was fortunate enough to have a bunch of opportunities to continue to play through high school and then through college. Ended up moving back to Arizona in my late 20s, and I was working for a consulting company at the time. Never got baseball out of my head, and just got to a point where I just got tired of talking about opening up a baseball facility, and so I just decided I was going to do the thing. And so in late 2017, early 2018, opened up an indoor space that we had teams and we did training, and it honestly looks a lot like what you guys are doing with Academy up here, but at a smaller scale in terms of facility access and space. And so I ran an indoor facility that had kids from, our youngest kids were 7 or 8, but we didn't have teams at that age, all the way up through, we had indie ball guys coming in and prepping for a tryout. They were just trying to keep playing. And during that time, like you're a startup, you're going through the growing pains, you're trying to scale, you're trying to figure out what your business model is, and how do you make the most impact for the kids? Because long term, that's going to be the most positive PR for your company, is to produce results with your players.
But what type of results?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Right.
Yeah, it's it depends on the kid, I think, because honestly, some kids, it's like, hey, I just want to have fun playing baseball.
Yep.
It's like, okay, well, that's the goal then for you, is to make sure that this game is enjoyable, even if you end up not being able to play. Maybe you don't have the athleticism or the ability to make your high school squad or make a college squad or play professionally, but like you want to make the middle school team and you want to have some fun with your buddies. Well, then that's our goal for the next 6, 8, 12 months. We're going to try to get you to that point. And then after that, we can reassess whether or not there's more opportunities here or there's not. And for other guys, it really was specific of like, I got to gain 15, 20 pounds and I got to throw 5 miles an hour harder if I want to play. And I've got 6 months to do it. And how are we going to do that?
And I honestly think having a range there of like what success looks like, that in and of itself is just different than the way that this thing is commonly talked about in the value proposition that we push to parents and players. Like a lot of it just has one thing, like we just kind of quantify and evaluate success of what we're doing by, are we checking that W box?
Right. Yeah, totally.
And a lot of that is like the results is focused on like team results.
Yep.
And not nearly as much on the individual athlete. And like, what do you want? What's your goal here? Not what my goal is for you. What is your, or mom and dad's goal for you? What is your goal? What do you want to get out of baseball? And then just like figuring it out with that specific kid, that individual kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And honestly, when I opened up our indoor space, I didn't really foresee teams being the core principle of the company. I saw it more as a training environment for athletes to come in and want to get better. And then over time, you start realizing that, like, hey, I've got 15 kids that are 11U, and they all know each other, and they want to play together. And it's like, let's throw some jerseys on them, and let's go out and compete. But it is an interesting thing, kind of what you said, Devin, of typically in youth baseball, the validation and the results are singularly focused on winning the game, right? And so the second you move away from the personal goals of like, hey, I want to make you make your high school team, or I want to get you to a certain velo off the bat, or whatever it is, the second you introduce teams, you're playing a dangerous game with a lot of people because they don't know any better than to look at that and say it's either a win or a loss as a team. And if I'm losing, then that means I'm a loser. And so that was an interesting thing for me. I kind of knew it was going to happen, but it was an interesting thing for me to have to continually try to remind my families of like, what are we doing this for? The games are supposed to be fun. I don't really care if we win or lose on the field, because 11U baseball, there's so many variables, and you're putting a lot of faith in an 11U to be able to execute appropriately on a lot of levels to win a baseball game. But we can focus on hitting the ball hard and throwing the ball hard and running fast and making a great defensive play and being in the right position. And like, those are the things that are going to scale as you continue to move forward in your baseball career.
Skills at scale.
At scale. That's
possibly.
Right.
I mean,
that's right.
TM.
Trademark.
Yeah.
2018.
Don't use it.
2018.
So, and luckily, I was able to have a really good group of families that were bought into that message.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm here with Driveline, and obviously we line up very, very well philosophically, and we kind of always had. Even when I was in my own facility, we used a lot of your products. We were using Track. I was getting certified in a lot of things. So I was on board.
That's really why he got hired.
Yeah,
Track user, baby.
It was the track demo back in the day.
You took a look at the profile and you knew I was a user already. So, but to now be able to do it with Driveline in a market in Scottsdale where it's already extremely competitive, just a challenge that I couldn't pass up. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and I think that the Arizona thing is so different. Like I was talking to Dylan Hawley, who we'll have him on next week.
Next podcast.
Next podcast we'll introduce another new member, a new face. I was talking to Hawley yesterday about this idea of like, what it looks like if we were to start expanding eastward, right? Because I think you kind of have a couple options. One is to go southeast, which presents, I think, I don't, my guess, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think it presents a little bit more like Arizona, where the weather is basically this environmental conduit that allows you to play all the time, which brings with it a bunch of other stuff.
Yep.
Or you could go northeast. And now we've got weather that might look a little bit more like ours, which might be a little bit better, maybe not better, a closer fit to kind of what we do in the Northwest. I think the cool thing is that we'll have the ability to kind of now look and see, okay, well, this is how what we do adapts to the environment in Arizona. And this is kind of what we're doing in Washington. And how does that inform like the next step? Because to me, the Arizona thing, it's such a goofy environmental thing, because it's like the weather is just the conduit. Like the weather, I think, is the biggest thing that allows you the ability to play year-round baseball.
Yeah.
And it also creates it as a destination for other clubs who are like, well, we want to do that. We don't live there. So now it necessitates travel ball, right? It necessitates travel because there is like California, Florida, Arizona, like Texas. The environment allows that stuff to happen. And for those of us in the Northwest or more different type of climates, we're never going to be in that place.
Right.
And it's such a weird thing to have just this simple environmental variable be like the accelerant on this whole environment. Like, not to put my formerly used to host a rap podcast hat back on, but like, you think about like New York in the mid to late 70s, early 80s, pre-crack. New York was like a failing metropolis. One of the things that kind of happened out of that is the music programs were like fundamentally neglected or just cut. Not a lot of jobs, not a lot of things for kids to do, but kids like music. So now you have a guy like Kool Herc comes in with like this dance hall dub plate thing. And now we're just going to kind of create music with the tools that we have, because of the environment does us give them the ability to like learn how to play the saxophone. Right. And then you have an Africa Bambaataa and a Grandmaster Flash. And now you have all these guys who, because of environment, are just create this new thing. And that new thing happens to be like guys that are like putting records in the bathtub to get the labels off them. So you can't see like the records that I have because I have the best breaks and I have the best sound system or whatever. And it's purely fertilized by the environment. And to me, that's like Arizona year-round baseball. It's just environmental. We can play all the time, so why wouldn't we?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good analogy. I think I was talking to Mark about this last night while we were finishing up with the academy guys. Of like, this is a great opportunity. I mean, we are a data-focused company. This is like A/B testing in the academy market. Of like, hey, this is two very different geographical locations with different styles, different understandings of baseball and youth baseball and how it should be done. Experience levels. I mean, there's just a lot of people in Arizona who either know their baseball or have played baseball. I mean, it's a spring training hub. Tons of guys live there in the off season. Tons of guys retire there when they're done playing. They're all around town, and so it's just it's a different market than Washington. I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just a different market. And so to be able to see what's working in Washington and kind of flex that against what's working in Arizona, to like see maybe there are differences, maybe there aren't in terms of how you become successful as a youth player in a youth program. It's going to be exciting. Like I said, I'm super excited to be a part of this opportunity, but I think there's going to be some differences to begin with. We're going to see which one is working and which one isn't. We're going to be able to go back and forth. And like you said, as expansion continues to happen, it's like that's going to prove to be beneficial for the longevity of Driveline Academy as we scale even further throughout the country. So
I think you're totally right about the fact that there's just like so many ball players down there. Like that's another part of the environmental effect where it's like, again, that configuration. We can play all the time. And there are a ton of dudes that used to play ball that like, they want to, like why wouldn't you? Because I think the problem with year-round baseball is not immediately apparent. It's immediately like, oh, my kid just like likes to play games all the time. Totally. You have to pay the piper later. Mm-hmm. Like that's the thing that comes later. And it's, to me, it's like one of those things where I think we're better off positioning, like, just being really transparent about how different we are in the approach, because like, look, that pathway of optimizing for year-round baseball brings with it a lot of like net negative, I think. Overuse is just a natural, it's a feature, it's not a bug of playing year-round. But because kids don't like produce a ton of force on a single throw basis, and throwing injuries are generally the thing that we worry about the most. Kids don't produce a ton of force generally. They also are like relatively resilient because of just like their biological, presentation. But when you think about things like Little League shoulder and Little League elbow, like those are repetitive stress injuries that are going to, again, be like a natural outcome of a thing that like looks like it's great up until the point that it's not.
Yeah. I use two kind of examples, and I've done this for years. I did this while I was doing tap. It's like you're on a train and everything is going great, but a mile down the road, the track stops. But like in the moment, you don't see the end of the track. And so it's like, you don't know when it's going to happen, but like your decisions now are going to have repercussions later on. And to understand that at some point the track is going to end, but you want to be your best later down the track. Yeah. Right? Like you want to be as prepared as possible for that down the road. You don't care about it as much now. And twofold on that would be winning early is like the biggest trap in youth sports, in my opinion, because it just is validating and feeding this machine that's just like we're doing the right stuff.
Well, especially in baseball.
Yes. And so it's like, how can you, and I can empathize, if you're a parent and you don't know anything about baseball, or you've never been through it, or you don't know athletics very well, to see your 11U player thriving right now has got to just be so great. It's awesome to watch, and they're having a good time, and they're winning, and that just is like, hey, I'm in the right spot. I'm doing the right things. And so for somebody to come at you and basically be like, you're wrong, I can understand the defensive position of like, I don't want to listen to that. I don't want to hear it. I want to just ignore it. Or like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm in a great spot. And so it's a tricky thing to deal with when you're talking about kids and families of like, hey, things seem great now, but like, I'm actually worried about where you're going to be in 6 years, not where you're going to be in 6 months. Yeah. And the year-round thing just kind of feeds that, when they're having fun, like you said, they're having fun and they're winning, you want more of that. And so the parents and the players make the decisions of like, I want it now, and then I want it in a month, and I want it 2 months from now, and if we can do it all year, I'm going to do it all year because it's fun. And that's fine too. Like if that's the route you want to go for it, but understand by doing that, you're shortening the life cycle, I think, of your career in a lot of ways that you might end up regretting later on. Yeah. And we can point to thousands of case studies of like that being the case. Yeah. And so it's like, hey, this isn't just our opinion. It's kind of like a fact that if you do these things, you're not actually helping yourself. It's a conversation that needs to be had more, but it's hard to get people to listen to it when they don't want to hear it. So,
well, and especially I feel like that analogy of like you're on the train tracks and you don't know where you're going. Like you really got to emphasize the fact that like the destination is very unknown, specifically a lot of times for like young parents where it's like their first kid through, and they either like never played anything around 90-foot baseball, or it's been so long that they kind of forget that that's a thing and it's going to have a very different demand. So, it's just like when I think about some of the more cantankerous interactions I've seen about parents on a field, like overwhelmingly, it's not a parent who's had like a kid that's already gone through high school and is like moved on to college, and whether they're playing baseball or not, and now they have a middle child that's like a freshman or a sophomore, and the youngest child who's like 12U. It's not those people.
Right.
It's first kid through 11U baseball, 12U. Like this is the pinnacle, and we're all swinging U trips, and everything's great. Yep. And like, you just don't know that there's this other thing that's like literally an inevitability. You have to get to this destination of 90-foot baseball and everything that it requires. And it's like, we had scrimmages yesterday with like our 13s and 14s, and it's so bizarre to look specifically at that group about the 13s and 14s who are kind of like either at or above the curve, and then the 13s and 14s that are like really substantially, they need some help. But like we had the same amount of calendar time. Like, how did we get here?
Yep.
And we're not just, it's not as simple as like, well, one of these kids is athletic, one isn't. Like, it's just not that. One of these kids is small, one of them's, like it's not that. It's the other thing. It's like, what is the stimulus and the stress that you've gotten over the last, like, from, let's say just from 9U up and not from like all the way T-ball, like, what have we done in the last 36 to 48 months to kind of compound interest and put us in a better position for the thing that's literally either happening this year or it's going to happen next year, or what opportunities do we just miss?
And not to toot our own horn too much here, but it's like really apparent the kids who have been with us for a while at that age, and the kids who are like new to us at that age, because this skill is just like, and again, it's not biology because we've got small kids performing better than big kids, but like the skill difference is when you focus on, I need to swing it and throw it harder, it actually works. And then you've got new kids at 13U who are the same age, they've had the same time playing baseball, and they've just focused on different things, and you can like clearly see they're not ready to play on a 90-foot field, a lot of them.
Yeah. And how much is like the ecology of how that athlete presents just in like athletic stuff, compelling all the baseball skill stuff on top of it. And it's like, so again, when you kind of come back to the same thing about like going into a market like Arizona, be like, hey, look, if we were going to hyper optimize for winning, why would we need to do like a 10 to 20 minute dynamic warm up? Like, why would we spend 30 to 40 minutes at the end of each practice, either playing a game or doing something that more closely resembles like conventional strength training? Why? You don't need to. We just need to kind of refine the application of the tools we have right now. But it's like, there's that other thing.
Yeah. We're playing the long game.
Yeah. And it's a really different thing. So, I think the interesting kind of inflection point that youth baseball is at right now is that like, I don't know, I saw something the other day that said that like we're approaching, it's like a $9 billion industry right now. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of customers, and I think there's enough customers in there who probably are open to this idea of like, well, what are we actually pushing towards? Like what is the thing? What do you really want? Because the hyper optimization for the current term path is very different than like, hey, we know there's an X on that map and I know where we're going to get to, and I know the task demands of what that looks like, and I know where you are right now. So it's just it's a choose your own adventure about like the next 12 to 24 to 48 months. It's a real different path.
Yeah. And I mean, money talks. And so you got $9 billion worth of market share out there in this industry. There's going to be a lot of people that want a cut of that, and they're going to do what they feel is right to be able to get a cut.
And it's so easy to communicate value through winning. It's so easy. Yeah. I mean, it's easy in terms of the way that's just like a universally kind of understood thing. It's easy because you don't have to deal with all the tech stuff that we have to try to deal with here. It's easier to train your coaches. You don't have to coach your parents. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's a super easy thing to communicate.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know what it's like up here, but growing up in Arizona and now seeing it from a coach's side, from an academy standpoint, I can't tell you how many teams pop up saying that they're an academy because the dad has a son who's a baller and he's got friends that are ballers, and so they form their own team because they just want to wreck house on everybody. Yep. And then all of a sudden you go through one summer of that team just destroying everybody because they've got good players, and now all of a sudden there's 75 kids in their academy, and it's like they didn't do anything. They're just a travel team. They've got nowhere to go. They have no plan on how to practice. They launched themselves into this market because they had a team who was winning at 12. And that's it. And I can count numerous organizations in town that's how they started. And it is a great place to start if your intentions are right as you move forward.
There's not better marketing,
right? Yeah, like winning is a great thing. It's going to get people attention to your program, but then you see those places fizzle because that one team they had no intention of actually creating an academy, but it was like, well, there's money in this. We can create a bunch of teams. We'll go out and we'll do the same thing with this team as we did with everybody else, but there's no development happening. There's no actually taking care of the kids. It's all about, well, you're supposed to win too.
Right.
And then the next team's supposed to win too, so that we can get another team that's going to win too. And it's just like, it's just not feasible that's going to continue over time. It's just not going to help.
Yeah,
So-
I'm really looking forward to like tryout season this year. Like everybody and their mother throwing around the word development. It's just going to happen. I mean, we saw it last year. Is that there are a lot of programs who it costs you nothing to say. You know, it's super easy. Oh, like we're focused on development.
Yeah.
And like if I was a parent that was like in the market and shopping, the first question I would have is how. Like how are you developing? Well, you know, we build high character baseball players, baseball IQ. Okay. But like that's the only thing you're developing? That's the lens? Because that's
Also, what does that mean?
right. I mean, this is the tough thing about I think like a lot of
How are you measuring that?
yeah. I mean, it's like mental skills training. You know, like I understand fundamentally in our game that's a thing that some people need. Like not every kid is either going to have irrationally developed confidence or a really short memory or some combination of both of those things that allows them to work through this game that like is very much revolves around perseverance. So I get that like mental skills training is something that can be beneficial for kids who might lack those type of tools. It's just a tricky thing to quantify. Like how am I developing? What are my KPIs for like positive mental development? You know, like, okay, like, well, you had one moment on the field today where you like hung your head. Previous average was 4.5 or whatever. Okay, great. I mean, but is anyone tracking mental skills development that way?
No.
I mean, if we aren't, I don't think anybody else is.
No. We've talked about tracking cry rate.
Cry rate, yeah. It's an interesting. Well, the funny thing is that like so Jason Ochart, you know, Driveline director of hitting, Boston Red Sox minor league hitting coordinator now.
Is that his title?
Something
I
minor
thought
league.
it was like director of hitting.
Sure, yeah, director of hitting. Och had something, you know, years ago. He was like, I think this was back when he was, I think it was before he got to Menlo. He was like the kids that I had that were younger when he first started coaching, like those kids that like cried the most. They were the ones they were the best players over time.
Because they cared the most.
Yeah, they
Bingo.
wanted it. They wanted it.
But it's such a tough thing to kind of like go from like you're the emotionally immature 10 to 13-year-old and now you're like this battle hardened 18-year-old. It's not a really clean path.
Yeah.
And I think the more that you focus on outcome as the sole value proposition of your program is going to push those kids away because our game is really hard.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. It
So
is. I think touching on what you're talking about of like, hey, what is an 11U parent looking for in a program and being able to identify that and make a decision that is actually beneficial for their kid. What I found is that honestly, unless they've been through it, like you said, unless they either were an athlete or this is a middle child or a last child and they've gone through this before with, you know, one of their other sons or daughters, I can totally empathize with the fact that they don't know any better.
Yep.
And they are searching and they're trying to educate themselves on stuff. And so, you know, we've been a part of baseball for a long time. It's easy for us to think like, how do you not know these things? When in reality, it's like most people don't know this stuff. And so it really does take time and conversations and education to get people to listen to what you're having to say and genuinely trust you with their son or with their daughter. So I can understand why, you know, it can be tricky. You know, I can't tell you how many times I sat down with families. It was a good conversation. I felt like they were bought in. They say, hey, I've got, you know, one or two other programs that I'm going to go listen to. They go listen to somebody else and they choose the other program. It's like, I can't really fault you. I think you might have made a wrong decision, but like, you know, you're looking for something and you seem to have found it. So best of luck with that. Right. And I want to be clear. I don't want to come off as thinking that there's not good baseball programs in Arizona, because there are.
Sure, of course.
There's plenty of places in town where it's like these guys know what they're doing.
Yep.
And they've got great kids and they do actually do great development. But like, I don't know any other program on the planet that handles youth baseball that has a team of data scientists. I don't know anybody else that has a team of R&D people. Like, there is just a different monster coming to Arizona, and I'm getting hyped up thinking about it, but like, there's a different animal coming.
Yeah.
And so our challenge is going to be, how do we continue to educate families that like this is different than what's already there, because it is a saturated market. You got big leaguers that are running programs that have coaches that are big leaguers, ex-big leaguers, ex-scouts, ex-major league coaches. Like, they're all over town. Even within the last 7 days, I've probably had conversations with 10 people that I know personally that are like, oh yeah, he played in the big leagues for 6 years and he's coaching 10 U kids right now.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, they're everywhere in Phoenix. So it's like, people know what they're talking about. But like, if we want to look at the scale of what the operation can be, nobody's beating Driveline.
Well, and the funny thing is that, like, even within what you said, there's some contextual layers to it, right? Like, yeah, we deploy an R&D team and data scientists to youth baseball, which I realize is a little bit preposterous.
Yeah.
But if let's say you're a mom or dad who's like a subscriber to The Athletic, right? And like, that like the Dodgers sent a bunch of people up here, a bunch of hitters and other players up here, and like we did, hitting biomechanics. And if you're like, Driveline Academy, Arizona, well, let's do hitting biomech on my 10-year-old. Yeah, but like, let's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and if we were trying to do anything like that, it's more to kind of understand what do 10-year-olds look like,
right?
Because we're not going to dome your kid up about getting that front foot down early because what we see in biomechanics. Right. What we are going to do is go like, hey, what's the best way we can evaluate hitters? Well, how fast do you move the bat, and how fast do you hit the ball, right? Because we get information about bat speed, which matters most, and we get information about application of bat speed, which also matters a lot. But like, bat speed. And the more that we have clear contextual information we can give to a parent that's like, this is where your kid is right now. Here's kind of maybe an expectation of biological development over the next 3 years. You want to beat that, right? Because I can't, I don't have a time machine. It's like when we were watching the 14s yesterday. There are a couple kids, man. It's like, bigger body, decently athletic kids who are still learning how to get good at moving fast. And option number one is we invent a time machine and go back to when that kid was 12 or 10. And the moment that they like threw the ball hard and zooed it 10 feet up the backstop, that we did something different. Like we had to give that kid some type of different stimulus, because the stimulus that they got over the last like 3 to 4 years has put you to the place you are right now, where you're 6'1", 180 or whatever, and you can't throw the ball 65 miles an hour. Like that shouldn't be a thing, but it is because of stimulus. Absent the time machine, it's like, okay, all we can do is go like, look, this is where you are right now. This is kind of average. And this is what we think, a competitive 15U player looks like. This is the place you want to get to next year. So instead of having like this, again, like on that railroad with just like a big like question mark at the end of it, it's like, this is a destination. This is where you are right now. Clear path.
And the R&D team is working on the time machine, but we're not expecting soon.
Right. Yeah, I think we're going to solve computed muscle control before we'll solve the time machine. I have a feeling. I have a feeling.
To latch onto that a little bit, I used to tell my players all the time, and obviously Phoenix is just one market. And you only can play against the competition that you have in front of you, right? Mm-hmm. But if you want to keep playing, your pond is about to get way bigger.
Yep.
And so, kind of to your point of figuring out like, hey, where are you at 12? Where is everybody else at 12? Matching yourself up against them, and also being like, well, where do you have to be at 14? I think our ability to use data to leverage that on a broader scale of like, hey, you could be a great Washington player.
Yeah.
But like, do you want to play past that? Because now you're playing against a kid from Tennessee or from Florida. And like, what's happening globally at your age group is beneficial for those kids to realize that like, yeah, I know I might have absolutely dominated this weekend against these competition, but like, are any of those people going to be your competition in a year? if you really want to play baseball, if you want to continue your career, you've got to broaden that horizon a little bit.
If you get the thing you want, right?
Yeah.
If you get the thing you want,
Right.
which is that next year you're still playing, and next year you're playing at an accelerated path, it's going to change.
Yep.
You know, like the landscape is just going to change. Do you want to be ignorant of that until you land at the destination, or do you want to know where you're going earlier?
Yeah, I would say it's 50-50 in my experience.
Yeah.
Like some kids are like, yeah, I need to know. And other kids are like, I think I'm great right now. I'm good right now. I don't need anything. I'll figure it out later when I get there. Both might work. I don't know. You know, I don't know which one might be better necessarily, because at the end of the day, the cream of the crop always rise, and the best athletes are going to win. And if you already are one of those guys that's just like God-given, this is just what I do, I don't think about it, I don't really have to train very hard to do it. But like, you're talking about 1% of the 1% of the 1% that are like that. So most people are not like that. So
But the tricky thing is that, like, if my kid is swinging the hottest U-trip bat on a 180-foot fence line, and like they're just hitting nuke after nuke after nuke, I'm like, I got one. I got the 101.
Yeah.
Right? I got the 101.
Totally. Yeah.
My kid is and it's like, you don't know that there's all this environmental stuff that is just going to happen.
Yep.
It's going to change. You're not swinging U-trip drop 10 forever.
Yep.
You just can't.
Yeah. There's like two big deadlines, you know, in youth baseball. It's like getting to the big field and still being able to play is kind of the big one for kids that are, you know, 10 through 13. And then it's like, okay, great. I made the transition. I got to the big field. Now, like, am I going to play any longer than this?
Yeah.
Or was this the end for me? And again, for some kids, it's like, it's the end. No problem. I'm good. I enjoyed playing with my buddies, and that's fine. It's like, okay, that's great. But for the kids that really, really want to continue to play, that's where it gets fun, of being like, well, we've got 4 years from now until you're done with high school to figure out how do we piece this together to make you continue to play for another 4 years.
Yeah. New iterative goals.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, and I've seen that comment from parents that are just like, my kid loves flying and driving everywhere, and they're having fun. So who cares? And I guess it's not my place. It's not probably anybody's place to decide if that's right or wrong. You know, like, I mean, you got to trust, I think parents know their kids best most of the time. But man, it's just, I guess my perspective on this is just colored, you know, by the fact that, like, I know my kid is just a psychopath about the game. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, if that's true, then I have to see this thing for clear eyes, like what it really is, you know, like what, I mean, which starts with, okay, like what's good? Well, you have to be really good at moving fast.
Yep.
Like you just have to, like that's just where it all starts. And like, you know, there's, you know, I think a lot of what we've seen in the last like few weeks on social media is like, you know, you've got kids that are going on like a final showcase right before high school tryouts. And some of those kids are in a showcase environment, over swinging is how I saw it referred to, right? Because the kid is just like, they're doing everything they can to just like muscle it up and hit it as far as they can. And, you know, a lot of people my age and older, they look at that stuff and it's like, well, how dare you? You know, like that's not going to play. And it's like, nah, man, you don't understand. This environment is very different. And yes, this kid is optimizing for like maximum potential output in this environment. Rising tide raises all ships. If you get that kid into a competition environment, they only have like 80-85% of that. That's still juice. Yep. And that's going to play. Right. And it's I don't know. You know, I mean, we shelved the podcast talking about some of this stuff that we'll keep it in the hip pocket for a while. But like, I think it's a tricky thing, you know, sometimes for guys that played the game a while ago, where like everything that they did was just like revolved around the deployment of game skill. And it's like, okay, well, this is a different thing, right? We're trying to build the athletic engine underneath to maximize and complement the skill when it gets deployed in games. Because if your max bat speed goes up to 70 and you take 10% off of that and now you've got a 63 mile an hour bat, well, that's still decent at probably 13U, even 14U.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we have maybe even 15U, depending on
depending on the area.
Swing it in 60s.
Right. Right, and I mean, I guess that's just a difficult thing maybe for some people to understand, that like, yes, we want to do both, right? We're not quantifying this stuff just like a single swing off of a tee. We are like intentionally trying to raise the ceiling because the floor comes with it. Yeah. And that's the stuff that you deploy as a player. And it's like, I mean, I'm pretty sure we've had this exact same conversation on the pod before, but like, in the World Series last year, one of like the last games was like an oppo flare, and it's like the whole reason that thing got through the infield and it didn't get turned into an out is because of whatever bat speed was still retained. Yeah. It's not a bad thing to hit the ball harder. No, broadly, just broadly. Although, when all that stuff came out about the Dodgers sending a bunch of players to Driveline, the comments were just great. Yeah, I've got some sweet selections. But yeah, I think the interesting thing about Arizona is just the way that we kind of communicate, the value proposition is just going to be very different than, the year-round training module. Yeah. That part is just, it inherently brings a lot of warts with it.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does. And honestly, the market down there is there's not a ton of places that do both the training and the teams, because I think people that are in the training world have kind of made the choice that they don't want to deal with the team stuff. They just want to deal with the training. And so you got a lot of kids that are going to one place to play games and travel around town or travel around the Southwest and compete, but then they're going to an entirely different place to get their training, to get their hitting instruction, to get
maybe not even one place.
Right, yeah, multiple places. And so it's from that standpoint, what we bring might be a little unorthodox or confusing to people who are so used to that model of like, oh, well, I've got a hitting coach already. I go to him twice a week and I do this, and I've got a pitching coach on this other side of town. I go to him to do this on Saturdays, but then I play on this team over here in the Southeast Valley. So for them to be like, oh, you can do all that right here with us and also play games with us and get year-round tracking on your progress and continue to change your goals based off where you are developmentally and all those things. It seems like a no-brainer, but from a person who's already playing pretty well and doing very well with the method that they're using, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Yeah. I kind of like where I'm at. And so there's some challenges, just obviously anytime you enter any market, there's challenges, but I like our chances.
Yeah. And again, like that whole thing about, Johnny or Katie has a hitting guy and a pitching guy and a catching guy and an outfield guy, and then like some sort of athletic training. It's like I've seen those kids, man, and they're just like, it seems like there's like two paths. One is the kid who's just like a 1% of the 1%, and that kid can get like a ton of difference or a ton of different stimulus and a bunch of different instruction. They're just so flippin' good that it kind of doesn't matter. But then you see those other kids who just are like, they're paralyzed. Yep. Like they're literally paralyzed and super domed up about what to do because they have, you can see they have like three different voices. It's instructor, it's team coach, and it's a parent. Yeah. And they're trying to navigate all three of that stuff simultaneously, and then they just get like really robotic, and it's tough.
Yeah, totally.
It's a tough scene. But yeah, the overtraining thing, I think, is just, I'm glad that like, the conversation about this stuff continues to get wings. Apparently, Josh Rudd had a segment on MLB Network, I think last night, where we're starting to talk about this stuff, and I've threatened to bring this up for a while, so we'll do it now, because I think it's relevant to markets like Arizona, where again this stuff is just kind of a natural outcome of playing all the time, is this consideration about overuse. Mm-hmm. So there was a 10U team in Long Island last summer, and they were playing in a league. They're playing in a tournament rather. Well, it was a league tournament where they didn't have pitch count rules. They had kind of this weird version of like innings pitched without a lot of cap to it. And I was alerted to this stuff through one of the Facebook travel ball forums that I'm reluctantly a part of, mostly just to see when stuff like this happens. And then I did some digging. And so the situation is a 10U kid, 10U, so 9 to 10 years old, who threw a 161 pitch complete game in a championship, and they won. And the framing, as I understand it, is that like this kid, Joey Bats, was the part of an organization that was like this. There was a small group. There's like small team beating a big team in this championship, right? And there was this big thread on Facebook where everybody was kind of talking about it, and a lot of people kind of airing out the coach. And there was one dissenting voice in the comments, which happened to be the parent of this kid that threw the buck 61 CG. And as far as I understand it, again, further context, this I think was like the 5th game that they had played in like 3 days. I think it was like a 1 game on a Friday night, 2 on Saturday, and then 3 on the Sunday. And the kid also threw another like 50 some odd pitches on Saturday. Yeah. So we're very easily well above 200 pitch count. And of course, everything else that went out in terms of field play and between, I mean, the throw count just had to be absurd. So I was trying to dig around a little bit and just I'm trying to understand context, like I'm trying to make sure I understand the totality of the situation. And amusingly enough, it had to be the parent. It had to be either the parent or perhaps the coach of this kid wrote on this site that allows you to do, I can't even remember if I have this site, but it's like, it gives you like this very like Hallmark card style graphic. And then you can.
I mean, it looks like the posters that hang in like classrooms.
Yeah, it's like a motivational.
Like confidence, and then there's like a picture of an eagle.
Yeah. So, so the parent or someone related to this kid wrote a 29 slide dissertation on what happened, and I'll just do a dramatic reading of a couple of these. The politics of travel baseball began to show its ugly face at this 10U baseball game. I watched Joey as he battled on the mound. Crowd cheering, teammates chanting his name, and even the owner of the big organization giving Joey dirty looks. An adult is giving a 10-year-old dirty looks. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Each pitch that Joey threw stood out to me. I could hear the laces on the ball whip in the wind and see the baseball glide and drop. Now, drop? Yes. Yes. Because I can't think of a lot of 10-year-olds that I've seen that don't throw gravity balls. Yeah. But like,
but how many of you are been able to hear the laces of the ball whip through the wind?
Sure, yeah, could be. This couldn't be a 10-year-old kid throwing changeups and strike sinkers like this. Those aren't sinkers.
No.
The intriguing part of this was that Joey Bats was in the last inning and over 150 pitches at this time, which like we get like one curse word, I think, a show without like YouTube banging us. But like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah,
you're 10, like. The opposing team parents kept chanting and yelling, but nothing could be done. This league these teams were in had no pitch count rule. And it's like, it's said almost like that's a good thing.
That's a good, that was 100% frame.
For sure.
Like, thank God this league had no pitch count rule.
No leash.
Now, some of you may say this is insane. A 10-year-old can't do that. It can injure his arm. Well, what I can see was a few things. One, this Joey Bats was not no ordinary kid. That's their, horrific grammar, not mine.
Hey, it's a double negative, so.
Yeah. I'm sorry. He was still throwing heat down the middle of the plate, and the umpire was calling all strikes. That very well may have to do with the fact that umpire just wanted to go home. It's like his 5th game of the day, man. Like, blah, blah, blah. This was big for a small town to do against a big baseball organizations, but Joey's dad seemed troubled. When I asked him if all was okay, he explained the parents on the other team were posting pictures of Joey on social media and saying it was abuse to let a kid pitch that much. And like, yeah, they're not wrong. Like, I mean, but again, the Reaper does not come to collect on this until you get to the point that it's like it's next spring tryouts and you tear the growth plate off the bone. Joey's dad explained the training routine Joey does almost daily for his arm. Joey's never pitched this many times in any game and does not pitch in every game, his parents told me. That's not how that works. Right. You're better off telling me that Joey throws 150 pitch bullpen every other day.
You'd be like, this didn't spike his AC ratio.
Yeah.
Like his chronic.
Like,
Chronic workload's real high, so.
So again, to your point about about parents that just fundamentally don't understand stuff, this is it.
Yeah,
This is
it
literally someone that's like, well, it's never happened before. It's not a big deal. No, that's exactly why it's a
big
problem.
deal. Right.
Yeah.
It's exactly why. Let's see. What I could see was the enjoyment of their son winning was taken away by some parents who were sore losers.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in sports, I know every kid is not the same. Some are more athletic and stronger than others, and certain rules wouldn't apply to every child in every sport. The DWI rule should not apply to me. I'm a great driver when I'm drunk.
That's provable.
Provable.
Yeah.
I haven't killed anyone yet.
Yeah.
What I saw that day was the ugly side of parents who can't handle losing and the beautiful side of the underdog winning. And it's telling to me that, again, when you're a parent whose whole perspective, the value proposition is strictly defined in terms of win-loss.
I was gonna say, is that the last slide?
That's no, there's 4 more.
Jesus.
That's the only thing that you can see, right? Is that there's 2 variants in terms of outcome here, winning or losing, right?
Yeah.
And what I can see is they were sore about losing, not like they were expressing genuine concern for my child's harm.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I reached out to the parents and spoke with Joey a few days later after the championship due to all the ruckus from the large organization that lost. The league the teams played in wouldn't even post Joey's team with the championship trophies and banner. Has our world come to this? Oh, man. Yeah, Joey told me he all was good and knows everything happens for a reason in life. Keep winning, Joey Bats. Keep winning.
That's the last slide.
That's the last slide.
Keep winning. Keep winning.
And
What
again,
happens if he loses and throws 161 pitches? Is that a different slide deck?
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be, right? I mean, the only thing that this is in service of is in winning. Health, reasonable guidelines for pitch utilization, overwork, all that stuff is at best a tertiary concern. Winning, winning, winning.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys have seen it before when you go out there on the field. You share examples like this with your families, and they're like, "Oh, we would never do anything like that. We'd never be a part of something like that." We understand how this is supposed to go, and then you get to the weekend, and Joey Bats has been catching, and then he's going to go pitch.
And he threw 85
and
yesterday.
Then the next game is the championship game, and Dad's asking why he's not pitching or why he's not catching, and that you're going to lose the game because you don't have your. It's like, well, you are doing it. You're just not doing it in the way that Joey Bats was right here. But it's like you got to understand that there's a rhyme and a reason as to why we do the things that we do to try to protect these kids. But in the heat of the moment, those parents, they just black out and they just say, yeah, no, I get competitive and I want to win and I want my kid to be a part of that game when it's happening. And if that means we're just not going to do that. We're not going to allow that to happen. And that can cause some friction.
Unless they send us a 29 slide deck.
Yeah.
And then I'll think about it. I'll think about allowing that.
Oh, man. Yeah, man, I think... I don't know, when I went down the rabbit hole in the G and Piaget concrete and operational stages of development, and one of the things they talk about is this idea of the thing that happens in the operational stage is that kids start to understand concepts around abstract thought, right? I'm able to differentiate myself and my own sense of self-identity from the game result, and that doesn't need to be a one-to-one map between those two things. And one of the things that Piaget advocated for is this idea that stuff, the formal operational stage starts, that transition to start to grapple and understand concepts around abstract thought starts around age 12 and lasts into adulthood. And when I see stuff like this, where it's very much like a parent who is paralyzed with fear about the context of what it means to lose, it's like, I really think that we've got adults who haven't gotten to that place.
Yeah.
Right? They don't understand how to put into context their child's game result relative to what that says about their child, and then what that says about you for making the child.
Yep.
And I say that as a person who, when my kid first started playing travel ball at age 11, I'm pretty sure I was just as big of a psychopath. 10 U. I was a bad coach. I was bad. I was bad because I was still learning how to deploy that tool.
Yep.
It's just It's tough, and you end up just very much like in this snake eating its tail ecosystem, where like, well, we got to win, we got to win, we got to win. That's the only thing that we can derive value from, and it compels this other source of all this other stuff. And it's like, I worry sometimes that people like listen to stuff like this and take it out of context. It's like, I'm not saying that winning is bad. I am saying though that like if the pathway that you choose to try to win is like well outside of kind of common sense for what you would want to like keep your child safe, then it's man, you gotta ask yourself some questions.
Yeah, that might honestly be part of the reason why you see so many, ex-athletes who have kids that are uber successful in athletics. Is that like the parent from an earlier age was able to develop those skills and probably lost a lot in their own life. And so they understand the difference between winning and losing.
Especially in baseball.
Yeah, on like a bunch of different levels, right? Categorically winning or losing things. And so they're able to kind of pass that on to their child. Obviously, there's some genetic things that are going on there that probably also play a factor, right? If your dad was a big leaguer, you kind of are on your way already, but like,
and what it looks like
Right.
at these iterative stages of competition. Like you have really clear information,
And you're watching, most kids had their parents as like their idol, and this person is also like a professional athlete. So there's like a very high pedestal there, and that guy's failing a lot.
Yeah.
And you're watching that guy fail and just being like, that's fine. I still make a lot of money and I'm still like a professional athlete, even though I fail a good amount of time. And it just like becomes more acceptable to the kid as he watches dad or mom fail and is like, oh, like it doesn't define
Part of
them.
life.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, Cecil Fielder, Prince Fielder, right? Like Cecil Prince is probably a better power hitter than his dad.
Well, depends on. I mean, if you
if you look at their-
here we
they're
go.
the exact same.
It is like,
I believe it's like the
Yeah,
exact.
it's
I mean,
But
Prince.
peak to peak.
Well,
right?
and Prince retired earlier because
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I didn't watch Cecil, so I can't.
Yeah,
But Prince Fielder was a dude. So.
But and imagine Prince has grown up in those dugouts and know that like there were games where his dad went 0 for 3, and like in the dugout culture is fine.
Yeah.
That's Cecil fucking Fielder. It's fine. Like
that's twice. That's twice. Sorry, you two.
I said that one.
You said that one quietly. Chloe, cut that
Chloe,
out.
help me out.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, and I just I do think that you're exactly right that a lot of it is just like it is educating parents. I think for us it's trying to be really transparent about the difference in our approach, and then once you're like you've got like one toe in the pool, it's like okay, this is why. This is why.
Well, we make all the kids go through, or all the parents, next year hopefully the kids go through like the PCA courses, and like one of the biggest takeaways for me from those courses is like, how are you when you get in the car or when your kid, if you don't go to a game and your kid gets home, what's the first question you ask? It's almost always like, did you win, or some form of did you win?
Yeah.
Like, how did it go? But like, that's a veiled question. For like, did you win? And just like the kids are taking the cues from the parents. And if that's the first thing the parents want to know, that is what they're taking the cue that's like, what is the most valuable thing here? Is like, did I win?
good point.
No, I have to tell mom that like, nah, we lost today. Instead of, hey, did you have fun? Or like, tell me about your at-bats. Like, did you improve today? Did you get better? Just immediately like starting to frame it like that is going to change the way that they respond to failure. And we're never going to get there. We can make strides, but we're never going to like get to that point where like every parent is like, did you have fun? Did you get better today? And like not asking about, did you win or lose the game?
Yeah.
And like there are times where like I don't particularly like to lose. It's a flaw of mine. I don't particularly like to lose. So like there's times where I do want some like, so we'll take last weekend as a really good example.
Oh yes. Yes.
My team lost and I really wanted them to feel that.
Yeah.
Like I wanted them to feel how much that sucked losing, because I don't care about the results. It was the preparation and the work ethic that went into the game that led up to the game. They didn't take it seriously enough. They weren't locked in pitch one, and then they got their butts kicked. And they shouldn't have, because they were a better team. But like I needed them to really focus on that result, because the result was a direct reaction of the preparation and the work ethic they put into it.
Yeah.
And it's I don't want them always focusing on winning and losing, but sometimes you're like, yeah, like that is the result that you need to pay attention to.
And specifically when that maps to like our Casey Weathers 101 mantra, like hard work gives you honesty.
Right.
Like, and it's like, yeah, like you guys have put in a lot of hard work over this off season, but like on that day in your preparation, in your focus, either before the game or during the game, it's like you didn't check that box.
Right.
So now we have to have an honest assessment of that. But I think we're still in a position where we're balancing both of those things, right? We're intentionally highly communicative of their development at an individual level, and then there's the game result. And now we get a chance to like, okay, I can see that, like, I can know that I'm getting better, but if I half-ass my way through this game as if it doesn't matter, or my preparation sucks, my focus sucks, my attention to detail sucks, my diligence sucks, then I don't get the result that I want. Okay, well, I got it.
Yeah, if the result is because of the other team had a higher level of skill, I never want my kids to hang their head for losing a game to a team that has more skill, or just like, hey, it was a really good game and the breaks went their way.
Yep.
But if it's like attitude and effort, then it's like you should be focused on the results there, and like because that's a direct result of your attitude and effort not being there in the game.
Yeah.
And like there's not a whole, because like my team has had a tendency to do this and then win the game, and they don't get the like I try to send the message of your attitude and effort needs to get better, and it doesn't land if they win the game. It's much harder to like actually get that message across if they're winning the game and going out there and like competing at a high level without putting a whole lot of effort in, and with maybe not having the best attitude going into the game. And like sometimes like you do need to like highlight the result because of that, but the vast majority of the time you don't, and like we moved on. It was one day, and then like the next practice we were right back to I don't care about wins or losses, and like we're focused on like development, and like you guys are all, and it just so happened to be an assessment week, so we could like focus on swing the bat faster. We're retesting you guys, we're trying to hit the goals that you guys set, as opposed to harping on that one game. But we're never going to get away from being results based.
Sure.
It's just like, what are the results that we're caring about, and how are we framing that to our kids? Because they're going to take their cues from us.
And I honestly,
99% of the time.
And honestly, I think that whole thing draws back to what Stryker, what you were talking about. It's just like, I mean, you're going to have some kids who ideally we get a chance to play high school baseball, but that might be the end of the story. And that is the overwhelming truth, right? Like there just aren't. I mean, what's the number? It's like 7% of kids that play high school baseball going to play college baseball.
7.8.
Yeah, it's real low. So if that's true, the question is how do I reframe the deliverable of this experience in a way that it is beneficial to you as a person in the way that you approach life, more than just these 4 years of putting on a baseball uniform? Mm-hmm. That's the point. Yeah. That's the point. Is you have to carry off the field something more about how this whole thing informs your sense of self and your perspective on being a functional and successful, ideally, human being.
Yep.
I would much rather hang my hat on that than go into it and be like, hey, parents, we're just going to be the winningest winners of all the winners. In the path is just going to be devoid of obstacle. Because that's just not life, man. It just doesn't work that way.
We can still win by achieving goals.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say the winning on the field, as we're defining it right now, it does become more important as you get older, right? Because it when you're 11, you're playing against a huge group of people who won't be playing in 2 years anyway. So it doesn't matter if you win or lose the game. It matters whether or not you win or lose being able to play at 13. Yeah. Like, that's the win for you. But as you get older and there's less and less people that are competing against you, winning and losing is sometimes the reason you're still playing or the reason you're not playing anymore is because you lost, right? Or you won. And being on successful teams, I mean, I don't know the science behind it, but like you hear it all the time of people like, I was successful because I was surrounded with people who were successful. Yeah. And so like a winning team breeds a certain type of culture. It breeds a certain type of work ethic. Competition, all of those things that makes people winners in results, right? So it does play its part in this game, but kind of to your point of 7.8% of kids are going to play past high school. It's like, all right, well, we got to get the other 93% to understand how to translate this type of mindset through the rest of their life. Because now this game is over. And like a lot of people, I know I felt it when I got done playing even college. I've kind of just like on an island for a while of like, this is what I was doing with my life. And now how do I take these skills and transfer them to something other than baseball? I don't know how to do that. No one's ever really taught me how to do that, but you have to kind of go back to like all the skills and the lessons that you learned playing and transfer them into a different avenue in your life. And for the 7.8% that do get to continue to play, great. Welcome to a totally different fucking monster because now the game is way harder than it was in high school.
Yep.
And you're going to have to refigure out how to compete at this level as well. So yeah, I mean, winning is important when you get older.
Yeah.
In my mind.
100%. And we do, we have like our classroom sessions at the beginning of a lot of practices. And a couple times now we've brought in either staff members that work with the kids or just like athletes that train at Driveline who played in college to talk about the college experience and like kind of give the high school kids an idea of like what to ask and what to look for from a college coach and a college program. What does a normal day look like as a college baseball player? Things like that. And multiple times we've come out of those 15-minute sessions and some of the kids are just like, I no longer want to play college baseball. That sounds terrible.
Yeah. It's not for everybody.
It's like, yeah, it is not for everybody. Like we have kids that are just like, I kind of want to, like, I know I'm not going to play professionally. And like, do I want to go and play somewhere in college where like that is going to be my college experience? I'm just going to be a college baseball player, or do I want to have the normal college experience? And like what I over and over again tell these kids, and we had a senior last week or a week and a half ago leave the program and not loved the program, but is just like done with baseball.
Yep.
And what I told him was what I tell these 15-year-olds is like, I just want you to retire, you to hang them up on your own terms.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to tell you you're not good enough anymore. I want you to be able to make that decision on your own because you have the skill to get there, and you decided I've seen my journey to the end, and I don't need to go any farther. Not this guy took it away from me, or this guy said I can't do it anymore, because there's like a part of that a lot of people never get over.
Yeah.
If like something is taken away from them and they're just like, I could have been a big leaguer, and this coach took it away from me because he cut me from the team, or like it was politics and he gave this guy more playing time. And like, if I had gotten that playing time, I would have played in college and then I would have been a big leaguer or whatever. And it's like, sure, maybe, but I just want all of our kids to be able to hang it up on their own terms and not have somebody else tell them you're no longer good enough to do the thing you love.
Yeah, having some honesty about like the reason for the end of that story.
Right.
It's like it's super important, and especially like talking to kids about just the reality of college baseball. Like, understand like the coaches aren't going to hold your hand.
Right.
Like they're just not going to, because to a degree they want to weed out those kids that need that.
Right.
Like during our my PTO last week, the kids were on midwinter break, so we went up to University of Washington and just like walked around the campus, went to Suzla or whatever. I was talking to the kids. It's just like, we walked into like Kane Hall, 300 seats or whatever. Like, wrap your brain around how different this looks like than your classroom. What does that mean? It means the instructor is not like, hey, Timmy, why didn't you turn in your homework last night? They don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care. They don't care. And if they're not going to care, then if you want to be successful, then you need to take some responsibility, right? And like, you need to have some honesty about like what you need to do and how you're going to get there. Otherwise, you're going to have an honest assessment of like, I didn't do the things I needed to do, and I was unsuccessful in this endeavor, and I just pissed away like $7,000 worth of money on this class or whatever. Yeah.
And it's difficult to be a student athlete and balance that schedule, get your work done, and like also play a full schedule of baseball. And it was really eye-opening when Chris Davis, shout out Chris
Davis,
who played at Princeton and Duke, obviously a terrible student, talked to the kids about like what it was like to have to manage your time and be able to play college baseball. And like certain things, he was like laying out the schedule, and the looks on these kids' faces were just like, that sounds awful. Like, what are you talking about? And like part of it was, hey, I was an outfielder. they don't schedule time for us to throw.
Yeah.
And like do like arm care or any kind of like development on the throwing side because like we're position players. So if you have grown up at Driveline and you are like very used to your arm care protocols to be able to throw, then you got to get there a half an hour early and throw your plyos and do your wrist weights and J-bands so that you are ready for when practice starts. So it's not just the schedule that you're being given. Like you have to go outside of that and figure out how to make this work. And it is not for everybody. And like, that's okay. Like you can make that choice that like, I'm good enough to play in college, but like I would rather focus on like life after college and like getting this specific degree or having this specific experience.
Yeah.
And college baseball is going to kind of get in the way of that. And like we have a senior right now who like wants to play college baseball. He does. But he is much more focused on getting the degree that he wants. So he gave our coaches a list of schools that he thinks he might be able to play at that offer his degree. And our coaches have started to reach out to those schools to see if they need specific players or things like that. And like, that's a really good way to go about it. And if they don't need players, he's just going to hang it up after high school and go get the degree he wants. But like, if he can do them both, he's going to try.
Yeah.
But like, you don't need to.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, I would have conversations with my guys whenever they were like, I want to play college baseball. Obviously, the first one is like, are you sure? Here's what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
Do you really want to do this? And I would give them honest feedback of like, I don't think you're either physically, I don't think you're ready, or mentally. I don't think you're ready to be able to handle what you're asking for here. But once we got through those kind of preliminary questions, some of the first questions I would ask them was like, what are you looking for in a school? Because like it matters, right? You talk about degrees. Like, hey, do you want to go to a big school? Do you want to go to a small little liberal arts school? What's your parents' like budgetary constraints here? Do you need to get a scholarship or do you not need to get a scholarship? What part of the country do you want to like? Do you care if it snows there? Do you need it to be sunny and have a beach? Like, and you start to like get these kids to paint a picture of like, what do I want out of a school? And then you try to match it up with, okay, well, where are those places that also play baseball? And are you able to actually play at any of those places?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I would always end it with like, okay, you say you want to play college baseball. That's great. I will help you. I will do everything I can to help you fulfill that dream. But are you willing to go to Podunk, North Dakota, D3, no scholarship, no nothing, to have that opportunity? And the answer is almost always no.
Right.
So it's like, well, I don't think you want it that bad then. Because like there's somebody who will love that opportunity and is going to take that opportunity. And so it is kind of like an eye-opening experience for them after like the initial, I want to play college ball. Once they start to really realize what that is going to entail and how badly they want it, they're kind of like, maybe I don't want to play college ball. So it really does. It just like weeds out a huge chunk of kids in high school. They're just like, that's not really for me. That's not for me.
And the tricky, I think the trickiest thing for parents to navigate there is that like everything we spent the last 5 minutes talking about is kids being more informed about what the reality of this looks like, and then them having to answer the question about whether that's a thing you really want or a thing that you need. And the tricky thing for parents, I think, is a lot of times is like, is again, man, my kid is, hitting nukes with a drop 10 U-trip. And I'm like, I see it, like I see this path for my child. Mm-hmm. But at a certain point, you have to embrace the fact that you can't play Rock'em Sock'em Robots with your kid forever. Or at least you shouldn't want that. Yeah. You don't want that. Your child needs to have autonomy, which means you have to give them the freedom to make their own choices and supply their own answers about what they want. Yep. And what they need. But when you walk into this thing as like a new parent at like 10U, well, we're just going to be the winningest winners because that satisfies the need that I have, which is to see my child not have to negotiate the context of losing. That's a very tricky thing because you only have so much runway there. And it's like, man, every day that passes further is a day that I have that much less control over the direction of my kids' lives. Yeah. And that is an MNFer of a thing to grapple with as a parent. Yeah, totally. Because you go through those stages of like everything I do revolves around keeping you safe and getting you closer to your dreams because like that's a thing that's just like an imperative. Yeah.
And having them lose can feel like you're not keeping them safe.
Bingo. That is the thing. Is you infer that winning is like it is putting a crack in the proverbial Hoover Dam of your dream for what you want for your child, which might not necessarily be your kid's dream. Or it's a very uninformed dream that the more that they get information about what it looks like, the less interested they are in actually trying to get there. Oh, well, I just spent $25,000 on Katie playing travel ball. And now she doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to go play college softball. Yeah, it bees like that.
Doesn't.
It bees like that. And you should want that, because the last thing that you want is your child compelled in a direction they think that is going to satisfy you. Because as a parent, you will die.
Yeah.
Nobody gets out alive. And eventually that child is going to have to reconcile the fact, is the direction of my life, did I go the way that I wanted to go, or did I go the direction that my parents wanted me to go? And all of it circles all the way back to what you're trying to deliver in terms of value proposition. What am I seeking out for my child?
Yeah. Yeah. Parenting's hard, man.
It's a mess. It's a
hard.
mess. Yeah, and there's no easy way out. And with that, let's end on a dark note.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Embrace the fact that time is a flat circle, and hey, that's how.
And we're all gonna die.
Yeah, we're all gonna die.
Until the R&D department comes up with a
Yes,
machine.
Yeah.
time machine, or you just like Ted Williams my brain and put me in a cyborg in a bit. Although I don't know. I don't know that I want that.
No.
No, man. The whole thing that makes this valuable is you don't get to do it forever.
I could live on in like a chat GPT chatbot thing.
It depends. What is the
Like,
color?
wouldn't that be kind of cool if, like, like in 150 years, somebody could like chat you and they like would have all of my like messages downloaded and like my
this is
syntax
like
down and be like, yeah, like I can, like you can literally talk to this guy who died like 150 years ago. I mean, there's not gonna be a world at that point probably, but
There's a thing out there that they're talking about doing this,
Yeah.
where it's like they basically like download your.
Yeah, download your consciousness. I mean, Joe Rogan was talking about this like in 2015.
how many gigabytes would your conscience be?
Well, this is the problem. Like if you hyper isolate my consciousness down to like my marriage, baseball, and music, like
Okay.
there's a lot there, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that you're leaving out, right? There's a lot of other context that might inform everything else.
It's true. That's true.
I don't know. These mysteries of the universe we'll ponder on a different
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
Devin, Jeremy, and Stryker get deep on metaphysical, non-physical forms of consciousness. So anyways, whenever this comes out, hopefully everybody's getting ready for their Little League, like rec
you
baseball
probably
high
already
school
started.
seasons. Probably already started. Probably starts today.
I was just gonna say, like,
today,
most of our
yeah.
kids are starting today, so
Yeah.
by the time this comes out, you're probably maybe even started games. Like if through the first few weeks of practices, you're maybe even doing games now.
Not yet in rec ball. Oh, maybe, I don't know. Everybody's schedule's a little
Well, who
bit
knows when
different.
this comes out?
Arizona's
Yeah,
playing
I guess
true.
you do, but
I guess. So yeah, man. Try to keep your arms healthy. Try to do this safely. We have a bunch of tools that are going out there. We have a blog that should be coming up this week that's like tools and tricks, and just like puts a bunch of our blogs and free resources and paid resources all on one page. So that'll be coming out shortly. And support at drivelinebaseball.com, 425-523-4030 if you have questions, or Driveline Youth on social media, and we'll talk to you there.
and I want to get one more plug in. Academy Online.
Oh,
It is like new, improved, revamped. It's great. We just started posting and emailing about it in the last like week and a half. And our next podcast, we're gonna dive deeper into that with Dylan.
Yeah, we'll talk to Dylan Hawley next week about Academy Online. He's been basically managing the AO product for us for like the last year and a half, almost 2
Yep.
years. Dylan has done a phenomenal job. He is a phenomenal human being. I'm shocked that he is so flippin' young, because he's just a dude. He works his ass off. And until we have, I don't know, a whole bunch of franchise locations for Driveline Academy, if you want to do what we're doing, Academy Online is just like the best thing. It is just
That's
like,
what I was saying. If you like what you hear on this podcast, and you're like, man, I wish I lived in Washington and now Arizona, and I could like do this. You can wherever you are. We just had a kid from Japan sign up, so like literally wherever you are in the world, you can do this style of training. We'll talk to you about like, okay, when do you need to be ready for competition, and we'll work backwards and make sure to put you on a plan that prepares you for competition. So if you're starting Little League and you thought you were ready, and then you're looking around at the team and you lack some skill, or like your team is just immediately jumping into throwing like 70 pitch bullpens week one, let us know. We can help you get ready for that.
Yeah.
Academy Online's a great
Yeah.
product.
Yeah. I mean, I think of Academy Online as I think back in 2018. I don't know that I would have making the hour-long drive down here.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
I mean,
we
honestly.
have Academy Online people from Washington that have signed up because
Yeah.
it's like not the easiest place. We're not the easiest location to get to, depending
Yep.
on where you live in the sound. And lots of people all around the world don't have access to things like this. So
Yeah.
take advantage of it.
Yeah,
it's,
so-
it's sitting.
Yeah, so we'll talk about AO in depth next week
Yep.
with Dylan. Stryker's going to go down to Scottsdale and go dominate down there. I'm sure that we'll be talking about events for youth on the youth side down in the Scottsdale facility soon. So if you're in that area and you want to get on a list, I think just reach out to us and we'll make
Throw
that
the phone
happen.
number and email out there again.
Yeah, support at drivelinebaseball.com 425-523-4030.
It feels like it's like you're giving out the like the rules of a game, like a contest.
Oh,
You
yeah,
have
at
to,
the end of
really
it, like
fast,
the
or
gamble-
or like the
Yeah.
gambling,
The gambling
yeah,
disclaimer.
like, yeah, the disclaimer, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so I've got one plug as well.
Oh yeah.
Kind of in that same topic. You talked about grow the game events.
Yep.
That we're gonna be doing. These are free events for kids to come into the facility at Driveline and basically get some training, get an evaluation, leave with a report card on their skills. Those are going to probably be taking place in March, end of March. Right now, we're last couple days of February. So be on the lookout for more information on that. But excited to get to see you guys down there in Scottsdale.
Yeah, doing something different. It's going to be fun.
And we're last time just so excited to have you on board.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and going to dominate the Phoenix market. It's slam dunk hire. Couldn't have been easier.
Yeah. No, it's going to be good, man. It's going to be good. So, catch you guys on the podcast next time for more baseball and metaphysics.
That was a life discussions.
Yeah, life discussion. Catch you guys later.